thank Dr. Stacy Harper, Assistant Professor at Oregon State University, for coming out to the YAHATS Commons tonight. He is a signature researcher of the Oregon Nanoscience and Microtechnologies Institute. This is a relatively new field. I remember PBS did a very short special on it not too long ago, but it's a brand new science, and the possibilities of it are incredible. And Dr. Harper is right at the forefront of that. So I want all of us to give Dr. Harper a very warm welcome and thank you, and she will give you her side of nanotechnology.
Thank you. I really am honored by the invitation to come and be a part of your series here. I am going to present some material today that is really hard to discuss sometimes when there's a really mixed pool of backgrounds. So as I'm going through, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or shout out, "Stacy, I have a question," and we can deal with it as we move along. I think that'll make it more interactive, and then you won't have to hold all your questions till the end, because I'm sure there will be a lot of them along the way. Okay? As they said, I am a researcher of the Oregon Nanoscience and Microtechnologies Institute. I'm also a professor at Oregon State University, and I'm split between the engineering, chemical, biological, and environmental engineering department and the Department of Environmental and Molecular Toxicology. So basically, when you're talking about nanotechnology, I'm kind of in the best of both worlds, where I can, deal with the engineering aspects of the materials themselves. But when I start looking at the biological impacts of these, I have a foot in the toxicology department. So it's really been beneficial, and I've just started getting some students into the lab, and bringing in toxicology students with engineering students has been very rewarding to see the types of creative things that they come up with. So today I'm going to talk with you about nanotechnology, and I'm going to start pretty broad. I'll give you an introduction to what nanotechnology is and why do we even care about it. Talk about some of the really cool applications and where we're cutting edge, at the forefronts of science in virtually every industry sector, health and medicine. And I'll give you some examples of some of the mind-blowing applications that are on the horizon. Then I'll talk to you about where my passion is looking at the environmental health and safety aspects of these newly emerging materials. Because they are rapidly emerging, and it's a really quick field, and so there has to be somebody at the forefront also going, okay, but let's hold up, we have all these great applications in mind for it, but let's not get into the next asbestos situation. And then I want to get into just how complex it is to try and investigate nanomaterials, which you can't see, and their impacts on biological systems, and some of the complications that make that very, very challenging. And then get into some of the principles of green nanoscience, where I see that the field has the most beneficial impact, where you can start working on making materials and applications that are very high performing, but are also inherently much safer than what we've dealt with in the past. And things that you can synthesize and make using way less chemicals, using much better purification systems and stuff like that to reduce the impacts overall. And then I'll focus in on kind of what we're doing within the Oregon Nanoscience and Microtechnologies Institute to gain the knowledge that we need to support green nanoscience. Okay, so I wanted to start really way back at the beginning, and Richard Feynman was really the visionary for nanotechnology. He was the one who's really considered the grandfather of nanotechnology, and it's not that he really did nano, but he conceived of it and put it out there for the world to consume before it was really a reality. He was judged by Army psychiatrists to be mentally deficient. But then again, Einstein, they thought he had challenges as well. He later won the Nobel Prize for his work on quantum electrodynamics, so he may not have been socially, all there, but he was definitely all there scientifically. Another claim to fame was that he was the one that showed that the O-ring malfunction was the problem that caused the Challenger disaster in '86. But this is the title of the talk that he gave in 1959 at Caltech. And there's plenty of room at the bottom. And this is where he conceived of the notion of nanotechnology, that this is actually feasible and could be done in our lifetime. He perceived that by miniaturizing everything and building things atom by atom, instead of taking something big and shaving it down and getting rid of all the stuff that you don't want, literally building something atom by atom all the way up was his thought. And he thought that if you could do something like this, that you could actually write the entire 24-volume Encyclopedia Britannica on the head of a pin. That's how small you're building things atom by atom. He actually offered a prize, a $1,000 prize to the first person who could reduce the written word by 25,000 times. And that was still an order of magnitude different than putting the whole Encyclopedia Britannica on it. But it took 26 years, but that was actually realized. And so that's kind of the background. And we're going to come back to this one here. There's plenty of room at the bottom because it's been kind of a heated topic throughout. So let's just start with an overarching definition of nano. And even this part is not easy about nanotechnology. So a nanoparticle is defined as a subclass of ultrafine particles, and it's nominally between the range of 1 and 100 nanometers. Okay? And it's at this size that these materials exhibit size-related properties that you don't see when those materials are bigger. So that's the really unique thing about nano and nanoparticles and why this has been such an exciting field. Now, there's no real international standard definition that's been agreed upon by all countries thus yet. The International Standards Organization, we've spent 3 years to come up with definitions for 4 terms in nanotechnology. But we're trying to gain consensus among 46 countries, and literally when you're talking across the table, you don't realize how when you say something it means it could be taken quite differently in another nation, right? I'm sitting at the table with a Russian diplomat, and he says, nanomedicine does not make sense in my culture, where nanomedicine is everywhere in the U.S. It's a common term. It's used everywhere. Nanomedicine, it's nanotechnology applied to any kind of health and medicine, right? In Russia, that means really small medicine. It doesn't make sense in their culture. And so you can see that this has been, really 3 years for 4 terms. And they're starting to get it going now, but it's one of those things that's taken a long time to gain consensus on what this means. It's almost always referred to between 1 and 100 nanometers, but the FDA has now kind of jumped ship and said that it's between 1 and 1,000. Some of the people in Europe have also came down on that side where it's between 1 and 1,000. But it's a size range, okay? So we're talking about a size, and we're really talking about a lack of standard terminology at this point. But roughly between 1 and 100 nanometers. So what does this look like? Okay, and this was put together by the U.S. Department of Energy, and it's called their scale of things. So up here, you're looking in the micro world, and we'll look at things that are both naturally occurring and things that are man-made. Okay, so we're going to go from bigger, where things that you can see, like an ant, a dust mite that you can actually see with the naked eye. Then we get down into the microscopic world where you're looking at like blood cells. Okay, you can't see them without the use of a microscope. Okay. They're much too small. If you go down 1,000 times smaller than that, then you're at the level of nano, okay? For some of the man-made things, here you see the head of a pin up in the macroscopic world. Down here you can see some gears that have been made that are as small as a red blood cell, as small as a grain of pollen right there. And then some other man-made things that are down in the nano realm where you're looking at literally atoms that are lined up in a row. Okay, so it's a size thing. Okay, so nano size, it's like saying microtechnology. Okay, well, micro was new at some point. Okay, but it's not that it's one technology. It's more that it's an enabling technology for virtually everything that's out there. So making anything that you make now smaller and stronger and better is what nanotechnology is about. But what's new about it is that we now have the ability, much like Feynman forecasted, we have the ability to actually visualize matter at the atomic scale. A couple years ago at Delft University in the Netherlands, they were able to actually visualize with a very high power microscope spontaneous repair of DNA, and they were able to see it in real time. And this was the first that had happened. So being able to just visualize the matter gave us more of an understanding of it. And literally the toys are what drive creation and innovation. Without being able to see these things, you can't perceive what we could do with them. So taking some of these major pieces, instruments, and using those now to focus in at this very, very small level. And I put this in here to show you that a lot of these instruments, okay, nano is very, very small. A lot of the instrumentation required to look at that very small scale is very large, very expensive, and most often is housed at some sort of shared user facility because of the expense and maintenance of these particular instruments.